Are you tired of typing on rubber dome keys? Are you tired of having your keyboard not hold the title of mechanically elite? Well then, you need a mechanical keyboard, bruh. So which mechanical switch should I get? That's a question I've been getting asked a lot, especially in the last few months. And so I thought I'd make this video as a guide to give you my informed opinion on which mechanical switch you should get. That is, if you can't go to a store and try them for yourselves. So before we get into this guide, I would recommend, if you can, go to a store where you can try the switches out and see which one you like the best for yourself. Because at the end of the day, it's about you and what switch you need. But with that being said, let's move on. So today I'll be talking about the advantages and disadvantages of using reds, blues, and browns. I'll also quickly talk about blacks, clears, and greens. Though before we get started, I'll talk about the advantages of using a mechanical switch over a rubber dome switch. And the first advantage, in my opinion, is the consistency of mechanical keys, in that they all have the same, or they all require the same amount of actuation force across all keys. And that being said, they also have a longer lasting lifetime, which means that consistency is going to hold throughout the life of the keyboard. So if you guys have had a rubber dome keyboard before, you'll probably notice that your Enter, Space Bar, and E keys probably wear out pretty quickly. And so what that means is that you've got inconsistency across your keyboard. Also, another advantage of a mechanical keyboard, or all mechanical keyboards, is that they're more responsive. Since the actuation point is halfway down usually in the key press, it's going to actuate faster, meaning faster response times from your keyboard over a rubber dome keyboard. Also, another benefit, in my opinion, especially with using blues, is that there's less fatigue on your wrists and your fingers, which could possibly reduce the chances of having arthritis in the future. Who knows, right? So I found that using blues, or even using a mechanical switch over using a rubber dome, in my case, completely eliminated wrist strain and finger strain as well. So anyway, let's get on with the first contender here, and that is the Cherry MX Red keys. So the first switch we're going to look at today is the Cherry MX Red switch. Now, I used this recently for about 2 weeks, and I found myself coming to the unique conclusion that these are the most responsive key switches ever. And I was like, wow, hook this up over a PS2 port and you'll know what I mean. So for gaming, if you want the fastest response time ever and you don't care about turbos or anything else, then this is probably the switch for you. However, that being said, we'll keep on the advantages though. I also managed to score my fastest typing run ever. Even though I tried so many different times, I managed to get 129 words per minute. So it allowed me to get the fastest typing speed ever, although I did make a lot of typos. So the advantages is that it's really responsive. It also allows you to get a faster typing speed if you have really precise or accurate hands, in my opinion. But let's move on now to the disadvantages, because that's when it comes in. Since this is a linear switch, and that is there's no feedback between you pressing the key and when it bottoms out, it means that you're not going to precisely know where the actuation point is. Since the actuation point's around about halfway down there, you're going to have to guess when the actuation point is. And so I found this design, it requires 45 grams of pressure, by the way, to actuate the key. I found myself making a lot of typos, like seriously. I've never made so many typos in my life, or typing errors in my life, before I started using a Cherry MX Red keyboard. So if you've got rough hands, and I've said it in the past, I consider myself to have rough hands, then you're probably going to make a lot of typing errors on a Cherry MX Red keyboard. Also, I found myself miskeying in games as well. Should I, like just accidentally pressing it, would actuate. So that's something to be mindful of as well. So you're prone to errors, in my opinion, on a Cherry MX Red keyboard. That being said though, I also found, because of the linear design, I also found myself bottoming out pretty hard. And so this led way to actually slightly noticeable strain on my fingers and some slight wrist pain as well after using this for 2 weeks. So I believe it's a little bit more strenuous on your hands and your wrists than a blue otherwise would be. So anyway, that being said, also the noise. The noise was a little bit less than a blue, but it was a little bit more than a brown in my opinion. So anyway, let's move on now to the Cherry MX Blues. So the next switch here, we're going to talk about the blues. Now, I'm going to try and leave my bias out of this as much as possible because I absolutely love Cherry MX Blues. But let's list the advantages of this key switch. And that is it's got 2 levels of tactile feedback and it requires 50 grams of pressure in order to actuate. So with the feedback thing, when the keys actually clack together, that will produce the noise. Also, there's a bump midway there on the actual switch. So that'll give you midpoint this really tactile feedback feel to the keys. I'll let you guys hear it quickly. So you can see that it's loud, but it's also extremely comfortable to type on. I'd say this is, in my opinion, the most comfortable keyboard to type on. So if you're on the computer for very long hours, then you might want to look at getting a Cherry MX Blue. With that being said, I noticed that my wrist strain and finger strain completely went away when I started typing on Cherry MX Blues. So awesome there, right? But let's talk about the disadvantages. What are the disadvantages of using a Cherry MX Blue? Well, that is that they're not as responsive as the Reds. So if you're a hardcore gamer and every millisecond counts, then you might want to get a Red. Though if you're like me and you're a gamer that makes typos, and you still want to be competitive and you want faster response times than a rubber dome, then a Blue makes a lot of sense, though they're just not as responsive as the Reds. Another disadvantage could be the noise. These are the loudest of all the any keyboard I've actually heard in my life. So if you need to keep noise down and you share a room with someone, then you may want to look at getting another key switch. Though, if you're like me, it's a love-hate relationship. Everyone I spoke to either loves the noise with Cherry MX Blues or they hate it. I absolutely love it because I'm in an isolated room where I don't have to care too much about noise. And so it's like music to my ears whenever I type on this thing because it's so comfortable. Anyway, that's the disadvantages. Let's move on now to the Cherry MX Browns. So the Cherry MX Browns, I got to borrow this keyboard from my work for 1 week, and I found myself thinking of it as not so much a hybrid, but a unique key on its own. A lot of people tend to refer to the Browns as a hybrid, being somewhere in between the Reds and the Blues, but I thought they were more of a Red in that they're a linear key. So you press it, it's a linear key. None of the parts clack together like the Blue, but it's got one little bump there of feedback on the actuation point. And so what this made me feel with the Browns is that they were the best for double tapping. If double tapping's a priority for you and you need a double tap, then go get the Browns because I thought they were the best double tappers out of any key switch I've tried in my life. That being said as well, also with the Browns, I found typing on them to be a little bit more comfortable than the Reds, though still not as comfortable as the Blues. So I think that's where the hybrid thing comes in. They're more comfortable to type on than the Reds, and they're not as comfortable as the Blues. Though they're a little bit, I mean, like a bee's dick, more responsive than a Blue, but they're not as responsive as the Reds. So I think that's the hybrid thing. I think that's when it gets thrown into the argument there when people talk about Browns. Though I will say another advantage of the Browns is that they were the least audible in my opinion. I thought they were the quietest of all 3 switches. So if you need to keep noise down, then Browns are going to be for you. But like the Reds, I did notice my fingers and wrists were getting a little bit fatigued. Probably not as much as the Reds. So in my opinion, if you're a hardcore gamer, then you might want to look at the Browns or even the Clears. And I'll talk about the Clears a little bit later. But let's look at the disadvantages. Not as comfortable as the Blues. And again, it's that thing I mentioned before, and not as responsive as the Reds. So they're about the only 2 disadvantages in my opinion. And again, it's in my opinion. But anyway, let's move on now to the other 3 switches. That is the blacks, the clears, and the greens. And then we'll move on to the conclusion for you guys. So let's quickly talk about the blacks. They require 60 grams of actuation pressure in order to actuate. And though unlike the Reds, and I mean they still are a linear switch, but unlike the Reds, I thought when you pressed them, the closer you got to bottoming out, it felt like it got harder and heavier. So more like an exponentially heavier switch the closer you got to bottoming out, if that makes any sense. The Reds is pretty much just straight linear, but this was sort of like, if that makes any sense. So the black was a unique feel on its own, and it may be a better switch for someone who's a gamer. I think the blacks would be better for gaming than maybe the Reds in some situations. So an interesting switch nonetheless. Let's talk about clears. These, in my opinion, are a better brown. Maybe because I got larger hands, but I found myself quickly trying out a clear. I thought that they provided more of a tactile feel than the Browns. And I thought they were more of a true hybrid than the browns was. I actually found myself, this would be my second best preference. If I was to get something and I couldn't have the blues, I'd use the clears as my next best. They are heavier, they require 60 grams of actuation pressure in order to actuate, so they're heavier than a browns, but I felt like with that bump, it made the bump a little bit heavier, and I actually really enjoyed typing on the clears. I thought they were awesome. Let's move on now to the greens. I thought these were, one word to put it, was ridiculous. After typing on these for a few minutes, I was like, wow, these things are heavy. So I can only recommend the greens to someone who loves the clicky clacky feel, but has really strong, or a really strong typing force. So in conclusion, it depends on you. What type of person are you? And I'm gonna make some quick recommendations here, and that is, if you've got rough hands, then I'm going to say you would either want a brown or a blue, especially for typing. If you need to keep the noise down, then probably go with a brown. If you don't care about noise and you want the best typing experience, in my opinion, then go with a blue. Both these will give you a better gaming experience than a rubber dome keyboard would, in my opinion. However, if you don't care about typos or anything like that, and you want the most responsive keyboard hands down, then maybe go with a red or a black. Also, you can go with a clear as well if you like the browns. I do recommend trying the clears. I absolutely love them. The greens, it's up to you, but yeah, I'd say the greens would be for someone unique and they know what they want. Anyway, that's that being said, one thing I will talk about is what about Razer greens? And essentially a Razer green is a KLH switch. It's not a Cherry MX switch. And I will say straight away that as much as I don't agree with them just blatantly copying another company's design, I will say that it is a damn impressive copy. When I tried the Razer greens at the store, man, they felt exactly like a Cherry MX Blue. And now to Razer's credit, the actuation point was actually higher on their Cherry MX Blues or their unique green switch than it was on a normal Cherry MX Blue. So it would indeed be better for gaming. So yeah, if you can get, KLH switches, I'm gonna say that they're legit. They felt really good. They felt exactly like Cherry MX switches. So I'm not gonna lie to you guys. So, if you can get a mechanical KLH Cherry Blue, mechanical KLH Blue, then go grab one. So Cherry MX key switches, KLH switches, they're both really good. Also Top-Ray and other unique key switches, I'll leave that to another day. If you guys want me to just talk about that, then I will. But if you have any questions or comments, then please leave a comment in the comment section below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you like this video, then please give it a thumbs up. And I'm going to say it one more time, try the switches if you can. Go to the store, try them if you can, because the blues, when I tried them years ago, I automatically cling to the blues. My gut instinct was like, wow, these feel amazing. And I'm still using them to this date, and I will use them for the foreseeable future anyway. So go to the store if you can, or go to a computer store or tech store if you've got one near you, and go try them out. That's the best way to decide which key is right for you. Though if you're relying on other people's opinions and opinions like mine, then I've tried to sum up the advantages and disadvantages of all of them, and I've tried to make some recommendations for you guys as best as possible. So anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll catch you in another tech video very soon. Peace out for now. Bye.